Okay.
No, that was called Transmutation.
Okay. Now I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So can you all see what I'm seeing?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, I'll wait until Ma gets back. All right. All right. So this is mainly to open up and introduce the discussion for today. And I want it to be mainly based on just genuine discussion about this topic, because I think this process is pretty unique to each individual. And I can talk about, my process. And I just want to, after that, open up to just everyone talk about their process, or feel quite free to ask questions if you don't understand what I'm talking about. So the process I'm talking about is what I'm calling transmutation. And this is just a term that I'm using for the internal process that when you're fasting, there's something that's happening, right? What is it that's happening when we are fasting? There's something that's happening with the attention, with the awareness, right? When we stop overeating and blocking our attention or our awareness from what this is, then our attention comes to this, just as a natural process of not blocking it by overeating or eating at all, really. And that's what happens when we're fasting. And so I'll talk the whole point of today is to go more deeply into this process of transmutation, to understand what it is that we're doing when we're fasting that is itself facilitating this healing process that we're experiencing. So, of course, I'm talking from a holistic point of view. And we're going to be dividing this up just for the sake of discussion into these three aspects, which we can call the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual, which we've talked about in the previous few discussions, in terms of physically talking about how the hormones come into balance, how there's a physical detoxification process that is upregulated when fasting. And this is all part of that shift internally in terms of our awareness that happens when we fast. And it's this internal shift that brings us to the emotional transmutation process, which is something that, we just don't have a choice but to confront when we're fasting. So that's why when we're fasting, there are emotions that come up that maybe sometimes we might be used to blocking by eating a certain food, or eating a whole box of Cheetos, or eating a whole pint of ice cream, or whatever it may be for you. Everyone has their own thing. And it might not even be a food, it might be something else that they go to in order to sort of block that natural need to actually deal with the trauma that we have, that we're holding on to in our bodies physically, and the emotional trauma that we're holding. We can say that it is sort of also held within the body as a memory. And it's the memory of that experience that created the trauma that keeps pulling us back to keep looking at that experience, and it keeps pulling that experience back up to our awareness when we are, let's say, just sitting down or trying to relax or sleep, or just get into a flow state where we're able to work efficiently from this presence and in an intuitive way, in a creative way, right? We're trying to get into that state of our own beingness. Then sometimes if we're not able to get into that state, it's because there's something that needs to be addressed that's coming up. And it's this emotional trauma that is itself connected to this physical detoxification process that is happening within the body when we're fasting. They're connected, they're linked. That is what we have to deal with in order to then be able to get to that space of feeling in your creative flow, feeling connected to yourself or to the divine, or however it is that you see in your belief system what it is. Now, spiritually speaking, this means that what we're trying to do in terms of this spiritual transmutation process is happening right now. And so when we're practicing this fasting cycles, there's always something that we're doing right now in terms of our thought processes, or in terms of our just general creation of what are we creating from in terms of our attitude, what thoughts are we feeding into in terms of what we're literally creating right now. When you're sitting and you're just sitting there and you're just looking at what thoughts come up, these are the thoughts that generally are used to feeding into, and they'll just keep coming up, and it's normal. It's just our normal way of being, right? And part of what we're doing with this fasting is just becoming a little bit more aware, a little bit more conscious of what these thoughts are that we may just be habitually creating in the back of our mind that may be driving us. And some of them may be really aligned with what we want on a soul level, and some of it may not be so aligned with what we want on a soul level, and maybe almost sort of feel like it's imposed onto us from the external, from growing up, or from whatever it might be, from how we might have been educated. It could be from all sorts of external sources that these various beliefs that we're feeding into might be coming from, right? And when we are fasting, this just gives us the opportunity to become more aware of what these things are. What is driving us right now? Is what is driving me right now something that's coming from what I know is true? If so, I know this is coming from my soul. If something I know is not true and doesn't resonate with my truth, then I know this is something that has been sort of imposed on me from the external, and I've needed to adopt it in order to survive in this world. And that's okay too, but eventually that's something that needs to be transmuted. So this is just, I'm just sharing with you my process internally that happens in terms of the transmutation of all of these habits that we have inherited that create disease and pain and suffering and all these things that we don't want to be experiencing, but we just, like, without even realizing it, we're just creating these things for ourselves to be experiencing. So fasting is a way of becoming more aware of how we're creating this suffering experience for ourselves. It's not necessarily that, like, life is suffering or whatever, but for some reason we seem to be creating these suffering experiences. And why are we doing that? Why are we doing that? So the point of fasting is to be able to answer that question for ourselves better, so that we can stop doing that. And that's the point. We can stop creating that suffering experience for ourselves. That's actually possible. it does take, it's a practice though. So this fasting, cycling, and slowly changing what we're eating and changing how we're thinking and allowing for all of this to evolve according to our truth and how our truth is guiding us to make our decisions differently next time based on our mistakes, which will be happening. We'll just be making mistakes all the time if we're actually living life. And that's fine. They're just made for us to be able to refine our decisions next time. And so from that perspective, I just wanted to share, this is all just the process of what I call transmutation. And it's just this process of digesting life. So sometimes we get into this state where we're just trying to survive in this world. And we put this process kind of aside temporarily in order to just figure out how to survive, and that's okay. But ultimately, we get to the point where in order to be able to live with a sense of well-being, we need to learn how to do this. In order to be able to get our health back, we need to be able to learn this. And that process of digesting life just means there is life, there's experience that is still undigested. There's experience that we're holding on to that we still haven't really learned from or perceived in the appropriate way. And that's why that's the trauma that we're holding on to, is that unresolved experience. And so ultimately the goal here with this transmutation process is to learn how to fully trust in life and come into life fully and not be afraid to come into life, because everybody's so afraid and everybody's trying to escape living life all the time. It's crazy. But we have to be able to go through this process of transmutation, and we need a lot of people, a lot of beings to go through this process of transmutation. And we need to create more systems where we can teach people how to go through this process and support people through this process. Because we need a lot of people to get through this to that point where they are trusting in life. Otherwise, things are just kind of getting to a breaking point right now. So if anyone else wants to kind of go off of this and share what their experiences with this process that they are sort of forced into or pulled into when they're fasting, and what their experience is like with it, and or have any questions about it, please speak up.
Well, I know I've always been an emotional eater, so, and COVID really, it was just a very difficult time. I think COVID just really, I was caring for my father and he died during COVID. He didn't die of COVID, but certainly, a secondary cause. So that's when I just felt the eating just was consuming me. That was my only way to deal with anything, just stuffing food, just not really dealing with my emotions. I knew my father was going to be dying, I was caring for him. Very difficult. And then being totally isolated because of COVID, everything was just packed,
Yeah.
I end up myself getting a back injury. It was so
Yeah.
food was my only way out. I wasn't seeing anybody, So, and
Yeah,
I realized fasting was like, oh wow, I don't need the food, I've got to be, just taking care of myself and just dealing with my health. And fasting was such a relief from not having to be like, I've got to eat, like I'll die if I don't eat. I didn't have, I was able to get over that, which was just so nice, not to
that's
have.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that, what you're experiencing is a great example and of just how overwhelm, just experiencing extreme overwhelm with a situation can get us to do things we know aren't even good for us in order to just feel comfortable, you
Yeah.
know? It's just kind of like buying time until, later we know we have to deal with it. But right now it just feels so bad. We just want a few moments of peace,
Yeah.
right? Few moments of comfort. But yeah, I think that in these moments, what we learn is how to pray and how to actually connect on a deep level with something outside yourself or outside of your idea of who you are. And in these like really extreme moments, that's when we naturally get pulled into these things.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I had turned more spiritual at the time. I mean, usually I do. I feel I'm a pretty spiritual person, but I was just getting angry, and it just kept on like, why? I mean, give me a break. I mean, I was more into that and just getting angry that, boy, when does this, where's the relief, or when does this end?
I
So,
think that's natural. Yeah.
yeah, it
It's a
was,
natural progression, to go from feeling completely hopeless and exhausted, to feeling angry.
yeah.
And it's better than feeling hopeless and like completely powerless to do anything.
Yeah, it get energy.
If you can channel it in an appropriate way.
Yeah, I'm glad I wasn't around a lot of people.
Funnily, for me, it helps to be with people. Like I meet friends. I like to go out and meet friends. I take my doggy out for a walk. When I meet people on the way, that's my company, and it helps.
Yeah,
It helps. Family and friends.
yeah. I know. I mean, usually that's what I mean, but COVID, there was like nobody's going out, nobody's doing, you don't
Yeah.
not see anybody. And then I was restricted from seeing my dad because he ended up in a nursing home. I couldn't see him. Oh, it was like and that's when he passed. So I know. I mean, I really wanted to be with people, and I think that's the isolation was just got to me. It just made me so upset, that I couldn't, seemed like there was no outlet. Food. Food.
Yeah.
Yeah, boy. But the fasting this time just really, I realized, no, I don't need the food. I could go without eating and I was fine, I'm not going to
It's
die.
the attitude with which we like go into to the experience really, really makes the difference. So, for example, if you were forced to not eat, it would be much tougher than if you're consciously choosing to fast,
Yes.
right? Because you'll be there battling the whole time in your own mind, right?
Yeah.
Saying, no, 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 I want food. But since you're consciously making the decision, your attitude is completely different about it, and there's no resistance to the experience. And so it feels entirely different.
It's true. I know. My friends kept on saying, "You're crazy. How can you go without eating?" I can't, I skip a meal and that's like, you're crazy. And I thought, I know, I mean, I used to fast years ago, but I hadn't done it for a really long time. And I thought, man, I'm never going to be able to fast again. But it was great to know that it's possible and it's fine. It's, more than fine.
Great. Good to
Yeah.
hear. It's very empowering to know that you can be without something that you thought you needed like all the time before. Yeah.
Yeah. Like Shah, I'm missing Shah because I think you would have learned a lot from his experience too. You can see it on his face.
Where is he?
I don't know. He
Oh.
hasn't shown up. He didn't tell us. I got this guy. So, Mary, where are you?
I don't think she's there.
Mary, show your face.
All right, if there aren't any other questions, I'm just gonna stop the recording here, okay? Unless does anyone have anything else to share about this?
Uh,
How about your own experience with the fasting or your own process? Or whoever's texting you, you can talk about that.
One thing that occurs to me, and I'm not sure this is valid or not, but which was the most challenging part of the fasting? Was it the first week or first day? What was it?
Sorry, what?
I was wondering which was the most challenging part of the fasting. Was it the very first day that you tried it, or was it the first week that you were going through it? What was the most challenging
For me?
for each of us? I think for me, one thing that would be really nice is if we could have kind of a class where we could check in with each other maybe every 6 hours or so and see how we're doing and just sort of exchange information with each other, and then do keep that up for the whole week. And that way, at least that 1 week, we could have kind of a joint fasting, and then maybe the next week you don't have to check every day, check less often, and then final week we don't have to check all that much, and then just sort of wrap up after 3 weeks. I don't know. What do people think of something like that?
Today is the last conference day.
Yeah, I know, but if there's going to be a next one, to run it a little differently, because I think it's nice to have that contact with other people and comparing notes and comparing experiences, how we're feeling and how we're doing and stuff like that.
We have to see how many people are interested.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Right?
And
For me, I know the first day is always the hardest. The second day, it gets a bit easier. By the third day, I feel like I can usually go on forever and just keep going.
you're talking about multiple days of fasting. I was just thinking of even just, let's say you try alternate day fasting, right? So you fast one day, the next day you don't fast the
That's
next
hard.
Oh yeah,
even that is hard.
That
Even
for
that
me is a very difficult way of eating.
Oh, I see.
But if you have a specific goal of losing weight, then that happens to be, I think, probably one of the more efficient ways of doing it.
I see. Is
But,
that what you
it's
did,
not
Margie?
not an easy way to eat because you're purposefully doing like tricking your body, trying to
Yes.
at least. You're trying to trick your body.
Yeah,
Your body's very intelligent,
yeah.
so you're trying to do something.
Margie, it
But
seems like
the
you were
question
pretty
is like
successful.
when you're done with that, then what?
Yeah.
So like you know, so that's why I'm saying the focus needs to be more on why do you want to lose weight rather than just trying to lose weight. You can lose weight and then you gain it all back because you didn't lose it for the right reason, you know, like happens to so many people all the time. But if people lose weight for the right reason, meaning like, okay, now I can do this that I couldn't do before, you know, and you're like training to do it. And every day you do a little bit of it. And then every day you get a little bit more able to do it. And then by the time you've lost whatever weight it is that you need to lose, now it's pretty easy for you to do it,
Yeah.
you know? And the thing is, then you have to keep doing it to maintain it.
There's also age factor, I think. You know, it's easier when, in some ways, it's easier to lose weight when you're younger, though it's not easy to fast. In older, it's easier to fast, but it's not very easy to lose weight. It's weird, I think. That's what I think.
Personally, I don't even want to lose weight, but I want the muscles to be stronger. You know,
Mhm.
I worry if the weight gets less, I'm worried about it. Oh my God, why am I losing weight? I don't want to lose weight. Is it the muscle, which is mass, which is going down? Or who's there? Let me check. Hey,
Wait, don't worry about her. Okay.
who's that?
I'm sure there's no one.
I'm gonna stop the recording now. We don't need to record all this.